Yeah, so hello. Big warm welcome to everyone for attending. My name is Niall. So I'll be talking to you about Tess, the ELIXIR Training Portal. So I'm the project manager for Tess, and along with Milo and Finn, we're responsible for the development of it. And the project is led by Terry, Carol, and Susanna. This presentation shouldn't really take more than half an hour, so we'll have a bit of time for questions afterwards. So first I'll talk about Tess, a bit about where it came from, the problems that it strives to address, and some of our novel features. And then if we have time, I'll talk a bit about the interesting technical infrastructure that we've created, so how we aggregate training resources using schema.org, and about another ELIXIR project, which is bioschemas, which has done a great deal to make Tess possible. So, given this is an ELIXIR webinar, I'm guessing maybe many of you already know a lot about ELIXIR, but just a brief recap, just to help highlight the motivations and some of the features and decisions made by Tess. So ELIXIR is this pan-European infrastructure, which comprises of 21 national nodes, plus a node for the EBI, and a special hub node that helps to coordinate and support the other nodes. So it's kind of like a spoken hub system. The overall aim of ELIXIR is to try and coordinate, integrate, and sustain bioinformatics resources across its member states, and enable users in academia and industry to access services for their research. So work split into these 5 topics: data, tools, compute, interoperability, and training. Most of these topics are grounded in real scientific use cases to ensure the infrastructure actually works well for real researchers. And so Tess kind of falls under the remit of the training platform, but as you'll see, we try our best to stay kind of plugged into the rest of the ELIXIR ecosystem. So each node within ELIXIR has many institutions associated with it. There are over 100 institutions that are part of ELIXIR altogether, which yield a really complicated distributed landscape. Resources such as training events and materials are being produced in each of these institutions, or a selection of institutions in huge quantities, and that's just ELIXIR. Each node, so globally, as well as in Europe, materials and events are distributed in heterogeneous collections of websites. As such, they're becoming more and more difficult to find by trainees and harder to get good exposure for trainers. So some are kept in global repositories like Goblet, and some are on country-wide repositories like with the DTLS, and then some are on institutional websites, or some even just personal websites just for trainers. So there's a really wide diversity in the presentation and structure of the landscape that these resources exist in. So here at ELIXIR, we aim to aggregate and present these widely distributed resources uniformly in a centralized platform to really improve their findability. I think this collides nicely with the off-site FAIR principles, which state sort of guidelines for data stewardship, which say that resources should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And as such, what we've been striving for in the development of Tess is to really improve all of those different aspects. So how do people discover tutorials, manuals, presentations, workshops, conferences, and other training opportunities? Well, the first stop is actually to Google it. Google works really well if you know specifically what you're looking for. If I say, for example, wanted to find a proteomics course, then the results that I'll get from Googling that will be from the larger websites that Google's given a higher place to in its search index. But events, however, have this quality of temporality that cause results to be outdated relatively quickly, and they never really get particularly high up in the search result pages. They also tend to increase in traffic closer to the events. So this is when people repeatedly go back to the site to check what the agenda was, what my travel arrangement's supposed to be, and share it like as a sort of last opportunity with their networks. And that, unfortunately, is when the algorithm decides it's worthwhile for you to see these events. After they've already begun, after the registration's finished for them, or after they've finished, this is when they get enough traffic for Google to actually present them. For materials, there's a similar problem, with small websites not receiving quite as much attention as the large websites. Large training sites have large quantities of training resources that usually have programmatic interfaces to their metadata. So it'd be really easy for Tess if all we wanted to do was integrate these few sites that have many materials, very low technical overheads, but that's not really our objective. What we want is to sort of solve this long tail situation where there's the frequency of sites containing few materials has really shot up. I think this is mostly due to the advent of easy to install and operate CMSs such as Drupal and Joomla and WordPress. So a lot of organizations, smaller than viably before, are more empowered to create their own sites rather than depending on a centralized repository. So the overall effect is an increase in distributedness of materials and events across the web. So this is really Tess's primary motivation. We aggregate from the whole spectrum of that last graph, where we try and pull from training sites from that kind of short head with lots of volume to the very long tail where there's many sites with small amounts of volume. And people can also register their events and materials into Tess manually. So once we've collated all of this metadata into one database, we can provide a harmonized view with lots of tools to help filter, search, and discover over the metadata. So since we've got all of that stuff, quite a lot of it into Tess, which is still an ongoing activity, we've created a whole host of other tools and features to try and facilitate discovery. So once we get data into the platform, we can go about improving the speed and accuracy of retrieval, adding additional metadata through curation and classification algorithms to create new ways to present and structure training and make Tess a useful application. So this is a look at the main perspective on Tess. The events and materials are separated into different tabs. So this is if you sort of select the materials tab when you go to the site. So once you've selected the materials tab, then the left-hand side you can see all of these faceted filters. So if you've ever been on any cataloging website or just shopping website like Amazon or something, this will be quite familiar. You have all of the different attributes that each of these training materials have. You can select multiple filters, and then the list of return results is only those that match that criteria. So the left is all of the facet types that we have. So content provider is the place that we source the metadata from. Things like scientific topics. So this is an EDAM ontology term used to classify the training materials and events. There's quite a few of them. I won't go into all of them, but there's things like tools. So we can have like a sort of tool-centric perspective. Standards, policies, and databases that we get from biosharing. One of the ones that I'm very keen on trying to develop the metadata for. This is something that's quite hard for us to aggregate from other websites, but license is very good for reusability. So I envision Tess not to just be used for the trainers, the trainees, but also for trainers, so they can come to the website, find useful training materials that they want to be able to incorporate into their classes or workshops that they're teaching. And to do this, they really need to be able to find out what the licensing is, whether it's a Creative Commons one, if it's CC BY, if there are any restrictions on usage. So this is all information that we're very keen on gathering, and it's also quite a nice interface to help people discover things. There's obviously search, so you can type in the name of things, and there's options for ordering. When you actually select one of the training materials, this is the kind of perspective that you're given. Down the left-hand side, we have metadata about where the content was sourced from. So we think it's very important at Tess to make sure we fully acknowledge the sources of the information. But that's not to say that we take anything away from these sources. I should make quite clear that Tess is just a registry, it's not a repository. So we don't like download the PDFs and presentations from other partners. We only store the link. So we're just acting as a middleman. We help people discover the right training materials, the courses and events and opportunities, and then they go onto the website. So these websites still get traffic, if not more traffic than they would have normally had. And yeah, that's something that we're crucial. We're very determined to keep promoting these sites to encourage more people to share their resources with us. One of the other features where the red arrow is at the bottom is that we allow people to link resources to link training materials and events in Tess to external resources. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but the idea is that we can so training materials don't really exist in a silo. They're often that you have a training material, but it comes with a program to use, maybe a Docker container or something to get things going, standards, databases, policies, data sets to use during the tutorial. So we want to be able to sort of link our training materials to all of the resources that it depends on. So one of the other features that we have in Tess, which I think is a very useful one as well, we've quite recently developed. So in the previous slides where you saw the materials index page and you could select all of these filters, that page is true for the events page, but when you do select all of the events, all of the criteria that you're interested in, so which country maybe you're in or you're interested in learning in, what tool, what topic you're interested in, you can select as many of these filters as you like, and you're given a list of all of the events that match them. Then you can click subscribe, and what you can do is create an imported calendar in Google Calendars, which automatically updates itself. You can use different calendar clients as well, so you can use things like iCal or whatever your preference is. But this will keep you with the most up-to-date list of all of the events that you're interested in. So there's also widgets to expose the content in Tess, the event content in Tess. So what you can do is use a bit of JavaScript to embed a filterable events list in your site through something called ion.pro. So we export all of our resources to a database called Ion, which was in fact a predecessor to Tess. And then they provide various interfaces to their database that you can embed in your own site. They have modules in most common CMSs, or they have this more agnostic JavaScript libraries. So all of these are fully customizable and can be neatly integrated into your own site. This is another area that we're very excited with. We've been working with the people on the tools registry. So ELIXIR, not just providing this training registry, but also very interested in harmonizing resources from lots of different different resource types. So they've produced this tools registry, and we're working with them to try and create these new ways of looking at resources, of making them more discoverable in a contextual manner that allows people to that reflect actual real life workflows that people in bioinformatics and various life science disciplines will use. So these training workflows in Tess are visuals, sort of step-by-step protocols allow users to navigate the materials in tests in topic or task-related ways. So they may encapsulate typical stages of particular kinds of data analysis, such as protein sequence analyses or structural analysis, where each stage in the workflow represents a given analysis step and links to the corresponding resources. So these will be training resources, tools, databases, standards or policies from biosharing. Yeah, so we're trying to construct more of these at the moment. We're trying to bring together a lot of domain experts to create these navigable workflows, and also to use existing ones that are out there on the internet to annotate them with EDAM terms, to write descriptions for each of the stages and to find all of the different resources that should be associated with it, and then we can code those up into tests. So we're really driving content creation for this at the moment. So as I mentioned, that there's the BioTools registry. So this is a registry of information about tools, web services, databases, command line tools, desktop clients, and all other variety of programs. So given the very tool-centric nature of training, as often training is given to teach you how to use a new set of tools to complete an analysis, it makes sense to form an association between tools and training materials. So the tools registry can, and in the future will, expose which training materials are available when someone views a certain tool, so they can find out what opportunities there are to learn about how to use it correctly. And we can expose the metadata in our portal with links to more information about tools that a training material focuses on. So more help, things like documentation pages and contact information, maybe publication information if they want to write about it. So we use the tools registry's API to get the latest and most extensive metadata when creating the association and when displaying it. So this image that you can see here is where you type into this. So when you're editing training material or an event on tests, you get given this form. You can type in the name of the tool that this resource is about. It gives you, it queries the BioTools registry, returns the results, and allows you to make an association between them. Then every single time that is viewed, it will get the latest information about that version of the tool. Just very briefly, some statistics about tests. So we aggregate at the moment from 33 content providers. I'm going to talk a little bit about what aggregation means and how we go about that shortly, if we still have time. But we've got a reasonable collection, I think, 244 upcoming events. We've collected nearly 6,000 events in the past, and this is including stuff that IAN has contributed to us. There's over bordering on 600 materials. We've completed one workflow in tests, which has been quite useful to highlight the features that we need to develop in the future. But this is the Ember workflow, which is something Teresa Atwood made a long time ago, which is like a bioinformatics tutorial. There's construction underway for 3 new workflows. So a lot of thanks to the structural bioinformaticians here, including Florian and Lorenza, who I think may be on the call. And alongside the tools registry, we're having a workshop at the beginning of March, where we're going to each bring with us several workflows that we found online. We're going to annotate each of those, and then we'll be able to code them up into tests. So we're really driving that workflow creation process. We've had over 500 users in the past month, 4,000 or so since the analytics began. It's quite hard to gauge how useful it is based off these broad statistics. But on a more micro level, we have been getting feedback from workshops where when people have reported where they were informed about the particular workshop that they have attended, they have said that it was through Tess. So that is quite encouraging to hear. So just to summarize a little bit about Tess, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about aggregation. So to summarize, is primarily aggregated, so this is us automatically pulling this information in and automatically keeping it up to date from the places that we're pulling it from. But some of it is registered manually. So these are materials and events. We have a plethora of tools to search and filter through this set. Training workflows to help educate and navigate and offer a more contextual learning environment. Subscription services that people can consistently be kept up to date. ION events widgets, these are all available now. If you have a website about a particular subdiscipline and want to get the events from Tess displayed in your site, if you go to ION's website, these are still available. We're trying our best to integrate with bio-tools and bio-sharing, and some of the upcoming work that we're going to be doing is to try our best to integrate with not just these two registries, but other ones too. Thinking about how we best could associate materials and events with data sets, with containers, virtual machines, like compute resources. And we have these ELIXIR node view. I've not really talked about this much as it's still kind of under development, but what we wanted here was to sort of present a shop window to all of the different ELIXIR nodes that that showed you information like who the training coordinators were, what events have been created or delivered by this node, materials that have been created by them. And one of the things that we're looking possibly to do in the future, we're still kind of sketching out how this would work, but one of the problems facing people who provide workshops at the moment is to try and find local trainers to deliver them. So it would be quite an interesting avenue if we had a yellow pages for each of the different nodes where postgraduates or young professionals who are interested in training could be listed and could be contacted to deliver workshops. There's a similar training portal in BD2K. So BD2K is almost like a parallel to ELIXIR, but for the US. And they're working on a training portal too. And we've been with them since their initiation, giving them advice at the beginning and collaborating on designing specifications to describe training materials and events. And this is going to culminate in a sort of meeting sometime, possibly in May, where we're going to try and go over there and co-develop some tools with one another. More curation tools are very important to us as well. So at the moment, we can try and automatically classify training materials and events. So as you saw before, there's these scientific topics, which are EDM topics. So us and the BioTools people have been trying to figure out how we can automatically assign this based off descriptive text. So we've made we've used something called the BioPortal Annotator web service as a first draft, and the BioTools people have been working on something called EDAM Map, which is also delivering a very similar effect. But it would be good if we could improve these tools so that we can get better classifications, which make the filtering significantly more effective. Trying to improve community-aided annotation, like things like license, you can't really just sort of scrape from a description. So we kind of do need people to actively do this. So these are features that will be oncoming, but it would be good if users can contribute suggestions, and then these would be accepted or rejected by curators. Some kind of feedback mechanism to show that we appreciate what you've done. So some kind of like sort of leaderboard, etc. feature would be quite good for that as well. I think I have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to talk very quickly about how Tess is actually sourced. So, as I said before, you have these very large training websites, and these tend to have really good structured data, really easy to extract the information from their websites. Whereas the smaller websites, not so much. They tend to just be HTML pages created on content management systems, but not very easy to get that information out of. So how do we actually get those small websites into tests? I mean, the first step is obviously manually entry. Like, you could just eyeball a website like Edinburgh Genomics here, find out where the title is. You can, as a human, easily parse this page and put the start and end date into this form, but it's not particularly scalable. It's not sustainable. If something changes on the Edinburgh Genomics page, then who's responsible for updating that? So the other option is HTML scraping. I won't really get too much into the particulars of it, but it's about looking at what's on the page, trying to identify where the different content is on it, and then writing a scraper to try and extract it. But if any changes happen to the layout of the page, then this is completely wasted, and we have to rewrite it, which instantly builds up technical debt. If you have 33 content providers, one of them changes their website, and it takes you a day to rewrite the scraper, then that's the entire development time of tests gone. So it's not a particularly feasible solution. So this is where schema.org came into. So schema.org was created by a sort of consortium of search engines. Sorry, one sec. So they obviously would like to know more specifically about what each website it's indexing is about, to be able to better point people in the direction of the resources that they're searching for. As they encounter the same problem, unless you wrote a scraper for every single website, or you had a humongous curation staff that could go and identify things, it's not really a technically tractable issue. So what they did was create loads and loads of vocabularies to describe anything that is online. So you could have recipes, for example. So this is a vocabulary that exists in schema.org, where you have the properties, the type of the properties, and a description of what they're looking for there. And they have this for everything, for like movies, for actors, for events, for books. So thousands and thousands of vocabularies exist out there on the web. And what they allow you to do is, for example, you have a recipe, and in this page you have things like preparation time, nutritional information, like how many it serves. Google or Tess, for example, if you wanted to extract information on this page, it would be very difficult. But if they annotated their page that explicitly said that this is like the property that this resource has, then it could be easily extracted, and this comes in a variety of formats. And what this allows is Google to be able to unambiguously tell what parts of the page mean different things. It can provide these knowledge graphs on the right-hand side of the page, and yeah, there's lots of tools available out there to extract that information, and we've created our own. And there's also tools to help you mark up all of these different pages. So as you saw before, where you had that manual example where you had to look at each of the different attributes and copy and paste them into a form, well, here you can highlight them, say what it's about, and what it yields is this block of information that you can then put in your website. Search engines can then unambiguously tell that this is an event, these are the start dates and end dates, the location of this event, and then Google will be able to, so as I've described before in one of my earlier slides, events are quite difficult because they become out of date, so it's more important to deliver them in a timely manner. Well, Google will then be able to say that this is the start date of this, so it might become less useful after that date has passed, and it should be promoted more in the days before it. And this is how that page would look in Tess. So we have our own scrapers that we can use to extract that information that the websites have gone to the effort of annotating. And we can scrape this on a nightly basis, so if anything does change on the website, we instantly get an updated version of that. There's many ways to do that. This is quite an emerging technology. Google are pushing hard to try and get people to start annotating their websites. And one of the advantages is that there's a very good search result benefit. They raise the exposure of resources that have got this schema markup in it. So because of that, business has driven this. There's lots and lots of tools available for people. There's lots of SEO companies that are working on developing these. And so this is sort of where bioschemas came in. They identified that schema.org is an incredibly useful tool, but it was underdeveloped for the life sciences. It's very useful for very common things like recipes and movies, but not so good for life sciences. So what we did was we assessed what types of metadata are being used when describing life science resources, and then created specifications or amended existing specifications to try and make this useful, make this usable by lots of different content providers in the life sciences. So we did this for events and materials quite a while ago, more as a proof of concept to try this for more scientific resources. So now Bioschemas is working very hard to do things like protein databases, so things like data sets and data repositories. So there's a new ongoing activity to try and build specifications for those, allow people to annotate them, improve their findability on search engines, but also allow them to be aggregated into portals like Tess. We also provide extra levels of metadata, so things like controlled vocabulary terms to use, minimum information models, so what is mandatory, what is recommended, and what is optional. And the overall effect of this is that you have these large institutional sites, things like Coursera and Goblet, where we can just write these little clients that just scrape that information. But then the smaller websites, things like the Belgian Institute of Technology or the French Institute of Bioinformatics, these types of websites can annotate the information that they already have on their website with these schema.org tags, and then Tess can easily aggregate that automatically on a nightly basis and keep it up to date by making them bioschemas compliant. So yeah, I think I overran a little bit, but not too much. So I'd like to thank everyone in Tess who've made this possible, including Alex Nalovich, who's a previous member who was previous project manager. Thank you very much to all of our guinea pigs. So there's been a lot of so a lot of the content providers have been very responsive and patient during the times when we've been developing the schemas to better represent training materials and events. But yeah, the developers at IFB, Biocomp, Goblet, Bitsfib, and the EBI have been incredibly useful. So thank you very much to them. And yeah, thank you all very much for listening. So I'll be happy to take any questions now.